it had to be something that was a controlled flight of some sort that maybe went haywire. That's my opinion.
Yet if this craft was at one time under control, who was guiding it, and where did it come from? The desert outside of Needles is ringed by military bases and test facilities. To the northwest sits the China Lake Naval Range. To the west are both the Army's Fort Irwin and the Marine Base at 29 Palms. To the south is Yuma Proving Ground, where the Army test fires long-range experimental artillery. And of course, most intriguing of all, to the north of Needles is Area 51.
In other words, we're standing right here in the middle of a military test area hotspot where test aircraft, some things that are like beyond what we even dream of, are being flown.
Two theories are possible. One, that it was an alien vehicle. Two, that it was one of ours. The answer may lie with a witness who claims he heard the impact.
I looked up, and that's when it came in.
It kind of went through a cloud and came out, and there was another one directly behind us.
On a quiet morning in May of 2008, something crashes in the desert outside of Needles, California. Multiple witnesses watch as a turquoise blue object is carried away by military helicopters. But there's more to the story, and it may be the key to understanding what's going on. All of this has happened before. In July 1947, another desert crash brings the small town of Roswell, New Mexico to worldwide attention. The military's announcement that they have recovered a flying disc shocks the world. Allegedly, the nearby Army airfield sends personnel to clean up the crash site and instructs workers to leave no evidence behind. Days later, the military changes its story, attributing the crash to a weather balloon. Now, in Needles, the team has located a key eyewitness who agrees to speak with the investigation on one condition: that his real name not be used. The witness, known only as Bob, arranges a meeting on the Colorado River, near where he saw the object on May 14th.
As I was sitting on the boat fishing at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the whole front of the boat lit up. I looked up and I saw a bright turquoise, blue, something falling out of the sky. It came straight across from one side to the other, and it hit. It just kind of made a thump.
Where did it impact?
Just west of my position, maybe 200 yards from my boat, in between the railroad tracks and the river.
Bob claims that within 15 minutes, military helicopters appeared.
And almost immediately after the first helicopter showed up, there was a second and then a third. And that's when the big one came overhead. That thing circled over my boat, went to the site, dropped out of sight for a few moments, and the next thing I know, it was up and flying.
Bob not only sees the armada of helicopters arrive, but their return trip with the alleged UFO in tow.
Did you see the object being lifted on the skyhook?
Yes, sir. That's where I saw the shape. Not only was it well lit by the other helicopters, they were shining their lights on it. It was still very hot.
Both Bob and Frank Costigan's testimony say that the object may be in the area of the desert closest to the river. The investigation sets off. Archaeologist Garth Baldwin will be looking for several telltale signs.
There should be enough of an indication of an impact of the size that Bob talked about. There should be some displacement of soil marked by a change in the sand, change in the texture of the ground. The sage grows very slowly, the grass grows very slowly, so if it's disturbed in any way, it's going to be obvious.
Right? We might get lucky, because if there was an object that crashed there, I don't see how the military could possibly cover that up.
But finding the actual site will prove difficult. Thick desert sagebrush blankets this entire area. The sagebrush will make an impact site hard to spot. But there's a backup plan in place. An eye in the sky. The ultralight will be rigged with a high-definition camera. As it searches from the air, Pat and Garth will follow on land, looking for any trace signs near the river, while Ted and Bill will retrace Bob's movements from the water.
If we think we can get relatively close to the spot, just let us know and we'll call on the ultralight. It can help us from the air see anything that might be on the ground that would be invisible to us.
We'll get you in the general area.
After nearly an hour, Bob sees something.
See where the brush comes all the way to the water?
Yeah.
That's where. We've got to be real close.
He recognizes some landmarks, power lines, and a bend in the river up ahead.
And I see the train trestle there, so you're sure that's this side of the...
One of the things that makes me pretty sure we're in the right spot.
The ultralight is called in for aerial support. After a few passes, the ultralight hits pay dirt.
Our pilot Glenn did say there was a burned area south of here. Now that sort of corresponds with what you saw, right, Bob?
That's correct. Somewhere in this position right here, due south of us.
The burns could be physical remnants of the flaming object's crash landing.
If we do S-transx, walking in an S, lazy S sort of pattern, and teams of two, 20 to 30 meters apart, we'll cover a lot of ground pretty quickly.
So why don't you guys start there, we'll start there and cross paths.
We better move. We don't have a lot of daylight left.
But before they get to the burn site, Ted and Bill find another possible sign of a crash.
Over there.
Check it out. That's about the size of what we're looking for.
Exactly. So this is really curious at how this dirt is all thrown up, right?
I mean, this is about the size of a berm or a crater that you might expect. It's not so much in a crater form, except maybe this way.
So if something really landed and threw dirt up in front of it, it would be a dune or a berm just like this.
Yeah, actually, if you look at it, it's almost a bit of a horseshoe coming in from that direction.
It's fascinating.
And that's the direction that Bob described the object coming out of.
That's right.
Ted brings in Garth for his opinion.
I don't see any direct impact, where it would have obliterated the living vegetation and then allowed everything else to live. I mean, I don't see an impact. I don't see an impact.
But the burn site is still further inland. A few hours later, it comes into view.
Oh, look at how burned this area is.
We've got burned stuff all over the place.
And Bob did say that when they extracted this object from the ground, this thing was still glowing.
But he described it as landing with a thud and not an explosion.
Exactly.
So that kind of argues against some kind of fire.
But Garth has other reasons for questioning this site.
There's little patches of burn stuff, probably from wildland fires. We've got a lot of burn trees here and over there. So, I think that's all natural. There's live vegetation all around it, dry vegetation all around it, old dry vegetation all around it. So that would have caught fire had this been the flaming impact that they'd said.
With no physical evidence found, the ground search hasn't been able to verify Bob's location. But with so much ground to cover, the Needles crash site might still be hidden somewhere in the brush.
This really isn't as easy as we thought it was. Our pilot did spot burned areas from the air, and we went to those burned areas and we looked at them. No evidence of impact, but we're going to press on further and see what we can find.
During the ground investigation, a new lead has come to the forefront. George Knapp, an investigative reporter for KLAS television in Las Vegas, has also been looking into the alleged UFO crash in Needles. And during his search, he came face to face with government operatives that may actually be men in black. Agents who are allegedly charged with intimidating UFO witnesses and keeping these